everybody. Welcome to Compliance Live. I'm Amanda Hosenfeld, and I have the best guest and the best topic to talk to you about today. I want to have a personal and heartfelt welcome to Risk Specialist and Certified Compliance Analyst, Nakia Campbell. Nakia, welcome.
Thank you so very much for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I think that you can offer just some really unique perspective into today's topic. So thanks for taking the time.
No problem.
I know they don't want you to get off the phone because you're so good on the phone, but I twisted their arms because your perspective is so unique to the topic at hand. So thanks so much.
No problem.
Before we get started, Mark from accounting would like everybody to know that this podcast is sponsored by Compliance Line. So thank you to Compliance Line for offering this space for valuable compliance and ethics related content. All right, so today's topic is, so you haven't had any ethics and compliance reports. Since most of the workforce is now working at home with the COVID-19 pandemic, have you seen an increase or a decrease in the telephone calls that are coming in?
It depends on the day and what occurs. So when COVID-19 pandemic started, it increased. We got, I don't want to be at work, we don't have any PPE, nobody's following the guidelines, nobody's following the facilities policies, and then it kind of slowed off and tempered off as people went home. You don't really see too many reports now that they're working from home unless they have an issue with someone through email.
Okay, so kind of the atmosphere has changed, right? So let's talk about those early days in the pandemic. I know that our phones were ringing off the hook. What kind of telephone calls were those?
Majority, we don't have the PPE, which everybody was out of the PPE, but majority of it was some of the administrators or the people in management had the PPE, they just were not providing it. And then of course, I don't want to be at work and I have to work. I even got a report saying that, we're being discriminated against because those with kids can leave and those without kids have to work.
That's interesting. I never thought about it. It makes sense, though.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
When you think about it, yeah, but when you think about it, it's like, for somebody like me, I don't have children. I want to be at work. I'm not going to do anything. Why would I be at home? But for somebody else, they may look at it differently. Like, they sent everybody home that has children, but everybody without children has to be at work.
I think that's so interesting. When you think about it from this kind of off on a little tangent, but I like this kind of path that we've gone down, is it like disproportionately affecting like female workers, that female workers are more likely to be at home with their children?
I will say that. And then some men get credited for being at work and having children.
That's so interesting, because I know that that is a topic of conversation when we talk about policies and risk assessments. What is the risk to sending all of the women with children home and keeping the women who don't have children at work, or same for men? What's the risk to the company of sending all the men with children at home? Is that kind of a discrimination issue? I think that's a real interesting
The way they look at it.
Yeah, so you said that calls have tapered off since people have been at home. What are the majority of the calls that you're getting now?
Now it's like harassment through email, harassment through chat message, the group messages, any emails that they receive that they feel are not good. I just took a call regarding people returning to work, and she was upset because she didn't get an email saying she could return to work, and then when she got an email saying she could return to work, she wasn't available. It just depends on what happens with the person at that time. Some of the other ones, I had a call where someone didn't want to return to work and felt like they shouldn't have to, and they wanted to resign.
Like voluntarily?
Due to COVID-19 pandemic still being out here, they didn't feel like they should return to work due to working at home. A lot of people now are concerned about people working and COVID-19 being out here, and they're working more hours.
Okay, like working more hours at the facility, or
Yes.
working more hours from home?
At the facility.
Okay.
I get a lot of calls about family members being concerned because they're scared that their family member is going to bring COVID home.
Gotcha.
Due to working all the time or being exposed to someone, or them finding out that one employee had tested positive and they don't know when they tested positive, and their alert goes up.
So it's like
and they start getting reports again.
do you find that communication from management about like policies and things like that, because don't say the word policy, because I love my policies, but hey, ouch, that hurt. Yeah, right here. It hurt my heart. I'm like, yeah, I know, Amanda loves her policies. The communication of, you said that one of the concerns that you just took was, hey, we didn't know we were supposed to return to work, and it sounds like a lot of the calls that you've received about like harassment over email, harassment over IM, are essentially a communication issue at the bottom of all things.
Either somebody is missing some information, or the management team is not communicating into the employees on how things are supposed to work. Because that caller did request clarification on the COVID pandemic pay and how it's going to be administered and when she should return to work. She was a little bit confused on the availability part and then her having to return to work.
Okay, so it just wasn't clear.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. This is we didn't rehearse this, so this is a completely genuine reaction. How many calls that you take can you chalk up to communication issues?
Ooh, 50% probably.
Really?
Not more. Because you'll ask the question of who provided you this information, and they'll be like, well, I got it from an employee, or I got it from a coworker. Well, who did the coworker get it from? And they got it from another coworker. So they're not, I wouldn't say they're not asking management. I'll say management will put out something, or put up a poster, or put up a signage for them to read, and they'll go ask a coworker instead of asking management what it's about. And that sends them our way. So they think we have clarification, and we don't. And we have to literally send up a request for clarification on what they're speaking about.
Right.
When they could have just went to management, but they may not be able to approach management.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's even calls that are patient harm or things like that. It comes down to, at the bottom of things, communication, where the standards communicated clearly, where they addressed clearly, where the incidents addressed with management. And to your point, that's a lot of times why people call us, is because they're not clear about who they should talk to, or they don't feel comfortable going to management
because they feel like management isn't approachable,
right?
Or they're not going to communicate with them.
Yeah. So let's steer into ethics and I could talk about this all day with you. I think it's so interesting. Well, when you do it all day, I think you offer just that such unique perspective on being able to say, this is the situation we got a call about. Let's boil it down to the lowest common denominator, and it is communication. It is policies. It is training.
A lot of them don't know where the handbook is located. They don't know where to find information. They don't have resources. It's not online.
Right.
Like, it's all there.
So I'm actually really grateful that you said that, because that is our first point about why you may not be getting calls into your hotline. So the topic again is, so you haven't had any ethics and compliance reports, and our number one reason why you potentially could not be getting reports is because people don't know where to find the telephone number.
Or they don't even know it exists.
That's interesting, because we advertise it here. It's on posters, it's in our handbook. We do training every year, and we make sure that our employees have those resources that says even us as a compliance company have a compliance line that you can call if there are issues. One of the questions that we ask in our initial interview is, where'd you hear about our line? And that's not combative. That's not a, hey, you're not really calling the right place. That's a genuine, hey, companies, check out where your employees are getting their information. What's the number one place that people get the number to the hotline, do you think?
The number one place would be a poster.
A poster, okay. So those are valuable pieces of information for employees.
The second one will be an employee.
Okay, so just a coworker.
It would be someone that, from my experience, it'll be someone that's called the hotline before.
Okay. That's interesting.
That's how they get the knowledge of it, because they'll usually tell the employee what's going on, and the employee will be like, call this line. This is what happened when I called the line. So it's usually word of mouth.
Word of mouth. That I find that so interesting, because in my experience, and I granted do not have near as experience taking calls as you do, but my experience is, hey, I grabbed it off the internet.
That would be the third one, if not the second. I don't know. I would say
it's hard. You know, you take so many calls a day. It's hard to gauge them.
Internet is up there too, because majority of people resort to the internet versus asking somebody in the place of employment, because some of them believe that they don't have anybody to trust.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So making sure that your line is advertised is a huge priority for employers. We, of course, there's a question here for me that I always think about when we talk about advertising the line, and I always think, is advertising the line kind of asking for
a report?
What do you think about that?
I don't think it's asking for a report. I think it's letting the employees know where they can report information. It's supposed to be, non-retaliative or, a safe place to go. I'm not going to say it doesn't usually end up that way.
Right.
But it's out there for the employee to use if they want to. A lot of people don't use it until after termination or something's happened.
That's an interesting point, that it's almost kind of too late when people finally resort to using the line.
It's usually when they decide to go ahead and report, and they want to give everything that's happened since they've been there, which at that point it doesn't become like severity information because they're no longer there. But I mean, they usually don't find out about it or want the number or interested in a number until something happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's when it's kind of like 911, right? Like, we know not to call 911 unless it's an emergency, but you know immediately that somebody's going to pick up the phone when you call 911.
Somebody's going to be there to answer.
So it's imperative that we teach kids and adults that 911 is the number that you call. It's very similar for your workplace, right? It's very important that you advertise your hotline. It's not asking for reports or asking for compliance work. It's making sure that your employees have a culture of knowing that this is there for them.
And some people do find a number and call and see what we are.
Really? Tell me about that.
Some of them will see the number. Something has occurred, but it's like they're reluctant to report it, or they don't know if they should, and they'll call and be like, what line is this? Do y'all take these kind of reports, or do y'all take only patient complaints or employee complaints? They get information. And then they decide, well, I'm going to wait, I'll wait a week, or I'll wait a couple of days, or I'll speak to this person before I actually initially make a report. Some of them choose to, a lot of them don't.
How often do people that call in just asking what the line is transition into making a report, in your experience?
On my line? Majority of the time. Some of them are like, no, I don't want to report, and hang up because they get afraid, or they think because you say the word investigation, it's going a little bit too far. But some are like, yeah, let me go ahead and report this. I need this to be reported.
Okay.
After you explain to them how the line works and what happens. Some of them choose to, some of them don't. Now, at my line, I'm hoping they go ahead and make a report. I usually tell them, this is the correct line. You need to go ahead and report this.
Right.
So someone will be aware of it.
Right, and that's why, it's because you want to make sure that these things get investigated and reported.
At least someone knows that way if something else happens, you can call back and it'll show that timeline. Look, I made this report initially. After that, something may happen. You call back. There you go. There's the timeline started.
So it's a trail. Also, it's a paper trail, not
online. It's a trail of what's going on.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. So that first reason is the employees aren't aware of or don't understand your line. The second reason you may not be having any compliance reports is that employees aren't willing to speak up. Do people not transition into a report, you think, because they're afraid to speak up?
it's happened to a previous employee and they got terminated, and they'll tell you, I don't want to report it because this employee was terminated for reporting, or people experience retaliation, which you guys talked about, termination, retaliation. So a lot of people, if they feel like or seen it or witnessed it happen, they don't want to really speak up. Now, when people get to their end wits and they're tired of what's going on, they start not to care. They don't care about the termination. They don't care about the retaliation. They will speak up.
And is that because it's just happened over and over again? It's continuous?
Happens a lot. That means they're fed up. They're tired. They want somebody to know because the issue in the workplace isn't being addressed. So it's time that it's reported so someone would know.
Well, I would hope it wouldn't get to that point, right?
You would think, but it does. It's reports out where people call and report a member of management, and then they'll call back and say, well, I was terminated. And so we're like, oh, no, we'll add that to your report, because they call back and let us know.
So somebody that makes a compliance report while still employed, it's not, that avenue doesn't stop if they are terminated. That avenue can still continue with the report number, and it's just kind of, like we said earlier, a paper trail.
Yeah, as long as you have the report number, you can follow up. Because some people receive telephone calls, some people get letters in the mail, and they feel like it should be added. Most people report that they don't receive their termination letter. They'll call us back and say, hey, today I got my termination letter, and it says this, and this. That wasn't what I was told when I was terminated. So they're trying to keep a paper trail and an update on what's going on.
So for employers that say, well, they filed a compliance report, well, we'll just fire them, we'll just terminate them. It's not necessarily the end of the road for that employee. So that's a huge misconception on the employer's end.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this statistic, and I want to get your reaction on it.
Okay.
All right, so analysis showed that 31% of reporters speak up in 9 days or less after an incident has occurred, but 20% of reports came in 60 days or more after the incident occurred. So 31% report within 9 days. Do you find that to be accurate? I mean, of course not. I'm not going to ask you if they pinpoint, well, exactly 9 days ago. But
well, I'm thinking of dates that they give, but
so is it kind of like either immediate report or they wait longer?
Yeah, I would say that percentage would be low. That's about right, because they want the incident heard right then, and that's not a lot of people. They usually wait. I would say they would wait that 60 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of people that choose to report right when something happens. And they'll tell you that on the phone, too. I wanted the company to work it out. I'm tired of it. So,
I'm not seeing it being worked out.
Nothing is being addressed. So now it needs to be reported. So, yeah, I would say that is correct.
All right, so we talked about two reasons why you might not be getting reports: that your hotline is not advertised, that your employees aren't willing to speak up. I want to take you through a couple more instances and get your reactions on a couple and see what you've had from your experiences. So some people don't make reports because there's been inconsistent follow-up from past reports, or even the same report and then just nothing has been done about it. So we take follow-up reports, as we were just discussing. Do you notice that people will call back more frustrated?
They don't like the response. They haven't gotten a response. They've called 15 times with no response. They usually get frustrated when there's no response. I don't want to say they get frustrated with us, but they kind of take it out on us.
Sure.
But they do let us know at the end of the call, it's nothing against you, and we're like, we understand.
Yeah, we're the messenger.
Yeah, and they'll tell you, it's nothing against you. I've just been calling forever, or I've called 15 times, and when there's no response, it's like, you get to wonder as the intake, like, are they going to respond? Like, it's been so long. She's been calling forever. But you can't really make that decision on this side.
Right.
You just have to keep sending it up and letting them know, look, they call back. They're looking for a follow-up,
What would you say to employers about follow-through on reporting of incidents?
My suggestion, if you get the report and you at least see that there's something going on, respond at that moment. Let them know you're investigating it. Let them know that next time they call back, there may be a resolution, there may not be. Let them know that you need specific information to investigate it, or if information was missing, something to let them know that their issue was heard at least.
Right.
At that first initial report. And then, maybe the second one, you might not have a follow-up because you're still investigating, but at least respond.
Let them know that, hey, we're listening.
Somebody got it.
We're looking into this. Thank you for reporting. I think you should be sitting on this side of the table because you're in my head, because you just said something about respond even though you may not have all of the information. And from our research, that's one of the reasons why people don't report. So one of the things that you just shared is that maybe an employer is not following up because they don't have all of the information. And that's actually on our list of instances why, a compliance report investigation could be slowed down, right? Because the person investigating doesn't have all of the information. When you speak to callers on a roughly scale of 1 to 100%, how much information are you able to get from callers?
I don't usually have a hard time getting information. I can say I can get 80% of the information if they're not afraid. If they're afraid, they won't provide names, they won't give a lot of detail, especially if they're anonymous. They don't want to provide detail that's going to get back to them.
Yeah, that's kind of another level, right? Is that we suggest that employers provide the ability to remain anonymous, but that doesn't necessarily mean
they're going to be anonymous.
Right.
They don't like the specifics, especially when they're anonymous, because it's going to identify them, or they've told an employee about it. So if they feel like, an investigator is going to come down to the facility and ask all the employees about it, the employees can identify that they're the person that they're speaking about, or the person that called the line.
Right.
So they're scared their identity is going to be exposed through the investigation.
What can employers do to reassure employees that more information is better?
Probably needs to be advertised. It might need to go on a poster or material that's laying around.
However you advertise.
Material marketing decoration. They need to let them know, look, the more detail you may get a response, or the investigation may go quickly. I try to tell the callers that the more information they provide, it may go a little bit quicker, but without information, it may take a little longer. That kind of gets them to open up a little bit, but they will tell you, I don't want to provide this or take this out of the report because I don't want it to identify me.
Okay, so that's kind of a last minute change can happen when making a report.
Sometimes they're identified, sometimes they remove their name at the end of the report. It just depends on how the person, wants to keep their name from being exposed or not being exposed. But I think that needs to be advertised, that they have the choice of being anonymous or being identified, or they have the choice of providing a lot of detail and getting a quick investigation versus not a lot of detail and getting a slower investigation.
Yeah, I think
or a late response.
I think it's worth it for the employer to put in the advertisement, whether that be a poster, in the handbook, on a little business card that they keep in their wallets, a laminated card or whatever.
It just be a statement. Be sure to provide a lot of detail for a quick investigation, or
right. And I think that's, a lot of our clients in our initial talking to the caller will ask that we say something about retaliation. We won't retaliate. But I feel like the more information a caller has, the better when making those decisions on how much information to provide. Yeah.
We also have the email portion where they can actually email it in. If they are afraid to report, they can actually document it themselves and remain anonymous to the best of their ability and send it in.
What do you think the benefit? What do you think the benefit is that they type the whole story out themselves rather than to tell it to you?
They know exactly what's being documented. They know what's being put out there. They know what's not being put out there. What information they provided, exactly how it was said. We do document exactly what they say, but we clean it up to where it sounds, I guess, professional.
You put it in a story format that's able to be followed.
Yes, and it details out what they're saying. But if they send it in through email, they'll have a copy of it. They'll know exactly what they're saying, what was said. If they are identified, they wouldn't have anyone to talk about it to except themselves.
Right.
You know, they would have control over the report, I think.
That's a good point.
It gives them control over the report.
And we have the ability for that, right? Email and statements. I think we even do like text to report. We've got that new functionality. I think that's really important to advertise, that you can say this in your own words. And there are a lot of like situations that maybe people don't feel comfortable speaking out loud about, a sexual harassment or assault or something where the questions are uncomfortable and they would just really rather write their story and put it out there.
And some of them call and say, I've already documented this. Is there any way I can just send it to you? Sure.
That's a good point. Like, I already sent this to the compliance department, but I wrote this thing and sent it to my manager, but nothing's getting done.
Or I sent it to HR and it was put in my file and nothing's been done. Like,
can you come every day? Because you just segue right into what I want to talk about next, Nakia. And that is unaddressed issues. So one of the reasons why you may not getting calls into your hotline is because you as the employer are not addressing these issues. And to your previous point, and they say, you know, I've already sent this to HR, I've already sent it to my manager, and nothing was done. Do you hear that a lot?
Yes, I get that a lot too. The reason I'm calling to report it is because I reported it to HR, I reported it to my manager, the DON, the administrator, the CEO, and nothing's been done. Or I sent the letter, I mailed the letter, I gave it to manager. Like, it's endless.
What would you say to an employer about that?
I would say address the issue when it's given to you, especially if it's given to you without being reported to the hotline. You can avoid reports being reported to, you know, corporate or senior management if you address the issue internally. And it also let the employees see that the issues are being addressed and they can come to you with any type of concern.
Right. My brain immediately goes to, do your managers have a policy that if somebody reports something to you, that you immediately go to compliance, or you immediately, you know, send it up to HR, no matter how small the issue is?
The chain of command.
Yes.
So a lot of people report that they do follow the chain of command and their issues are still not being addressed.
Right, but is that because there's not a policy for that next level person to immediately, do they feel like they have to handle it themselves, or should they report it? Because I know being the HR liaison here, we get a lot of people that will come to me and they'll say, hey Amanda, this is happening, I don't know what to do. And then I have to look and I say, well, should we report this up to compliance, or is this something we can handle?
So you give the employee the issue. That's a good question.
That's a good question, right?
Yeah, that's something to know. That's a good question to ask.
Because what's the accountability?
Should have policy in place to where they have to at least address the issue because they are a member of management.
Right. So if you have an issue, right? If you have an issue with your manager and you take it to the manager and the manager's like, okay, great, thanks for bringing this in, and puts it in your file, what is the recourse for that? Like if that employee then goes to compliance and says, well, I addressed it with my manager, and compliance comes back to the manager and says, hey, did you get this complaint? What do they say? Well, yeah, I put it in their file. Do you know? You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Like, that would be, I wouldn't want that to happen if I was a manager.
Same.
I wouldn't want my manager to come to me and say, oh my God, you know, this is the same report that she gave you. Why did it get to me when she gave it to you? So.
Right. So are there policies and procedures for your management in place for your management?
There should be.
Yeah.
There should be policies.
Don't threaten me with writing a policy. I will do it. I will write a policy.
Something that says management has to address issues of employees before it gets to senior management. They wouldn't have a reason to go to management if they didn't. They would just go right to probably us.
I wouldn't want to be that manager, to your point, in that place to say, ooh, you know what, I did get this sexual harassment claim, and put it in their folder, and just never, I talked to the guy, he said he didn't do it, and that was that.
If management just put it in their folder, that means the issue wasn't addressed. The employee is probably still going through it, which is where they probably call us.
Right, so reason why you're not getting any calls to your hotline, because these situations are going unaddressed.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna flip the script just a hair tiny little bit and say one of the reasons why you may not be getting calls into your hotline is because you're not celebrating wins.
Mm-hmm.
So how many calls do you get that are complimentary?
Ooh, 2 in 3 months.
Okay, so not a lot.
No, when you get a compliment, it's like, wow, okay. You know, it's different. It's like a different atmosphere. Like, oh my God, you guys helped me, and this was addressed, and I love you guys. It comes very rare, but we do get them.
When you have a report that is a bad report, it's a harassment, it's a bullying, it's an intimidation, it's a patient care incident, those are naturally things that you want to address. What would you, generally, let's address these patient care issues. What would you say to an employer who receives a complimentary call?
They need to call the person that actually made the compliment and let them know that they received it. And whatever they're going to do for the employee or the patient or whoever they're complimenting, they should let that caller know. I think they should be notified that it was received and what's going to happen to who they were complimenting.
Right.
Because they took the time to actually compliment, and we don't get a lot of them. I think they should call. Because some people call and they say, I think they should be given a raise. I think they should be given an award. I think whoever took the time to call should be contacted and notified of what they're going to do with that employee. Because a lot of them don't hear back and they don't get any responses. And the employee is probably not even recognized.
Yeah, I think that's such a travesty.
Mm-hmm. And we don't even know if they're recognized or what happened to them or anything.
Well, I hope we don't
get
get
they're a good employee.
Right. Well, I hope we don't get follow-ups on those that were like, I called to compliment so and so, but
you do receive.
Do you really? Tell me about that.
It's like they'll initially call and compliment, and then say, for instance, they'll call back with that same number and say, I also want to compliment another employee.
Okay.
It's not that they're looking for a response. They're just wanting to provide the additional compliments. A lot of people don't really care about the response to a compliment, but I still think they should be notified of what happens with that employee or patient or whatever.
Absolutely.
Because they took the time to do it, and we don't get it a lot.
Good report or bad report, you want to make sure that your employees, your patients know,
Yes.
I'm listening, I have heard this information, and we are addressing it.
Yeah. They should always respond. I always respond. That's just the best thing.
That's the bottom
Let
line
them know that you got it. Let them know you received it in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
That way that they know it's being looked at or it's being addressed or somebody's seen it.
Right. At the bottom of this, the topic is, so you're not getting any compliance reports into your hotline. And I think a lot of those reasons that we've discussed today can be fixed by simply communicating that you have received the issue, good or bad, and that you are addressing it, good or bad. We are fixing what needs to be fixed. We are complimenting what needs to be complimented, and and that's the culture that we are putting forth in your company, in our company.
I also believe if there is a long investigation, let them know that it's long. Let them know it may take more than a month. It may take more than 6 months. Just let them know. Don't leave them with calling back and trying to figure out what's going on and nobody knows anything, I haven't been contacted. Just let them know. It's easy to just put in there, we're still investigating. It's going to take about 14 more days or 16 more days or 2 more days.
Right.
Just let them know something.
Just because you're a compliance department doesn't mean you're not accountable for
and
that
you should
level.
be addressing issues if you're the compliance department.
Exactly. Nakia, will you come back?
I will.
This has been really enlightening. It's been a lot of fun.
I do know a lot, don't I?
You do. I know you were concerned. You're like, I don't know what I'm going to say. But I think, you just offered so much insight. I really hope that you'll come back and that you'll consider it.
Please invite me back.
Okay. Yeah, anytime. Well, please follow us out on our social media. We are on YouTube as Compliance Live. We are on Twitter at Compliance Live, and we are on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Compliance Line. And there you can find just a ton of research, insights, links, helpful resources. During this COVID pandemic, we're giving a lot of stuff away for free. So check out our LinkedIn for those offers, and we hope that you have learned a lot. I know I've learned a lot, and I got the promise from Nakia that she'll come back. So
yes, I will be back. And I do follow all of our channels.
Do you? I'm
Yes.
flattered.
Yes, I do. I get all the notifications. I love it.
Do you?
Yeah.
Good.
All the notifications.
That's a high compliment
Yes.
from you. So for Compliance Live, I'm Amanda Hosenfeld,
I'm Nakia Campbell.
and stay compliant.